Thank you for the opportunity to speak here tonight. It's an honor to be at Versailles, and it's an honor to follow Professor Susskind. Most of our views are the same. Some are slightly different, but not much different. Today we're going to talk about the intersection of law and cognitive computing. And cognitive computing is Watson. It's IBM's take on artificial intelligence. And I'm going to demonstrate several Watson capabilities for you so that you can see what we're doing now, not the art of the possible, but the actual, as well as a tool that I myself built. And before we do that, I think it's important that we align around a common language. Language, as we'll see, is critical about what cognitive computing is and what it is not, starting with an observation. It seems that every time I pick up a legal professional magazine or journal, I'm confronted with an article that has a headline something like this: "Robots will replace lawyers." And lawyers are right to evaluate artificial intelligence with care and consideration and skepticism. But these sort of alarmist articles perpetuate a negative refrain that fails to help lawyers meaningfully evaluate an important new technology, I think. Well, Watson Legal is not about replacing lawyers with machines. It's about a partnership, and a benign partnership, and we'll get into that quite explicitly. Watson Legal is also about listening. So I didn't come here tonight just to present to you. I also came to interact with you, to listen to your opinions on artificial intelligence and incorporate them into the tools that my group is building, because we want to create tools that reflect real needs, not assumed needs. So human beings have long relied on tools to augment the capacity of their cognitive abilities. The abacus, the sundial, the map, the calculator. But for the past 50 or 60 years, these tools have presented themselves in the form of traditional, programmatic, deterministic computers. The computers that we're all familiar with. And the notable thing about that is that 88% of all data is invisible to computers. 88% of all data is what's called unstructured data. And unstructured data is narrative text, audio, video. It's a law. It's a book. It's a journal. It's an email. Language is incredibly difficult for machines to parse. It's full of ambiguity. We can say the same thing 100, 200 different ways. We communicate with sarcasm and tone and nuance that is idiosyncratic to our culture. Well, if we could parse that language, if we could mine it for insight, we could transform professions, including this profession. And of course, I'm here to tell you that that's exactly what we're beginning to do. We can navigate the ambiguities of human language in context. And as we'll see, in context means in the context of the clients you represent, not generally. These tools can reason. They can form hypotheses and put forth evidence-weighted recommendations for action. And they learn. Over time, they become an organic extension of a practice area or of a business. And much in the same way they learn, like a child who knows basic arithmetic and graduates to trigonometry, geometry, perhaps physics. And this technology really couldn't arrive soon enough. At IBM, we think that it's absolutely, fundamentally necessary. It's not merely a nice to have. Not necessarily IBM's version, but artificial intelligence in general. We're seeing a proliferation of information. The previous speaker provided us with several examples. And again, most of that information is unstructured. It's too much for human beings to parse. And it's too complex for traditional computer systems to parse. But so what? How much of this information really matters? How much is merely noise? It turns out that mining this information for insight represents potentially the greatest tool that humanity has at its disposal. Not to be hyperbolic, but truly, and I'll give you an example. In America, the third leading cause of death is physician misdiagnosis. And it doesn't help that if you are an epidemiologist, you would have to spend 160 hours a week reading just to stay current in your field. It's not possible. Not at all. But what if a machine could read patient medical records, anonymized, sanitized patient medical records? What if a machine could also read medical journals and could also read doctor's notes about the patient that's now standing in front of this particular doctor in context? That doctor would, through partnering with an intelligent tool, be able to reach a more accurate diagnosis in less time. So this has real-world consequences. Watson's helping doctors do that today, and I'll tell you how, and I'll also tell you how we're using some of the same technology to augment the practice of law. But first, the medical example. There's a particular protein called p53. And p53 inhibits tumor growth. And a university in America, Baylor University, has been studying p53 for the past 20 years. And on average, research physicians at the university have discovered one new protein that affects p53 per year, on average, for the past 20 years. And they were interested in using Watson, but before they agreed to do so, they challenged IBM. They said, what if we refuse to tell Watson which proteins we discovered, but instead provide Watson with 23 million medical articles? Would it find the same proteins? And it did. It found all 20 of them. And it didn't do so in decades or years or months, but in weeks. And it discovered 7 new proteins immediately that are now being discovered. So we can talk about the possibility of artificial intelligence, but it's here right now. This is happening. So what happens when a law firm or a corporate legal department decides to use this technology? Well, we are privileged to meet with law firm leaders and general counsel all over the world and conduct workshops with them to determine the best use of Watson from their perspective and based upon the capabilities of the technology. And there are many different potential uses, but we're also seeing themes of interest. And we believe that this is a value that IBM can offer. We can help our clients understand what might they be able to do with cognitive, and why are other organizations trending towards certain potential uses. And the number one use, I'll call it a use category, involves repurposing your knowledge, your firm's collective know-how, in the context of the situation at hand. So now, the ability to do this would depend to some degree upon data privacy laws in various countries. But you could do some variation on a theme of this almost anywhere. The idea is that Watson ingests everything, or years, of what a firm's attorneys have drafted, everything they filed with the court, every email, every status update. And in addition to that, they connect with the law. And they connect with industry reports that concern the industries in which their clients work, and with the news specifically about their clients, and with judges' rulings and orders, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And the goal is to find a pattern in the noise. What is it that they do, these firms, that make them successful? And where are opportunities for improvement? They want to see this with incredible high-definition granularity. And context, again, the context of their clients. So the parallel to medicine is, of course, I can see more about the patient than I could ever see on my own as a human being. Here, I can discern more about the client than I alone ever could, because I can't read all of that information. I can't remember all of that information. I cannot connect the dots. And the other benefit, perhaps equally important, is the ability to elevate the performance of every attorney within a practice area up to the level of the best attorneys in that practice area, the most effective, I should say, rather than best. Because now you know what it is about you, about your particular firm, that causes you to succeed. And you can scale that, you can democratize that expertise. I'll give you, I don't have the tool that I want to discuss with you. I have 3 demos, but the tool that I want to discuss with you, I can't show you yet because the visual portion of it is under a non-disclosure agreement for a couple more weeks. But I created a tool called Outside Counsel Insights. And this tool allows a large insurance company in America, one of the largest, to evaluate outside counsel. So someone in the audience asked a question of the former speaker, what is driving change? You know, is it, how are in America, how are different state bars, how are lawyers reacting to artificial intelligence? Are they keen to adopt it? Are they refraining from that? One key trend that we see in the United States is businesses, law firms, clients, are using technology across their whole enterprise, and they're seeing benefits, and they're expecting their law firms and their partners and their vendors to offer the same kind of efficiencies that they themselves see. Famously, Deloitte attributes a 20% increase in net revenue over the last 5 years to their investment in analytics generally, not IBM per se, but of course, if they see that kind of a benefit, they're going to begin to expect that kind of a benefit. And so Outside Counsel Insights looks at lawyer invoices. And in America, there's structured information in there. So what is structured information? A lawyer's billable rate, mostly numbers, the time it took to complete a certain task. But there's also unstructured information, a narrative description of the task that the attorney performed, with multiple steps because we don't block a bill. And so our client is able to see, with extraordinary nuance, how long it takes to complete certain tasks. In certain jurisdictions, this client spends over $1 billion a year on outside counsel. And in fact, outside counsel spend is the #1 pain point of corporate legal departments globally. They spend on average 50% of their annual department budget on attorneys. Now, insurance litigation is the same from state to state, generally, of course, and so it's easy to benchmark this kind of information. This would not be possible for all types of law, not at all. But the ultimate goal of this client is not just to choose the most effective lawyers. The ultimate goal is to create benchmarking data through which to enforce fixed fee billing. We believe that they haven't, and other businesses like them have not moved towards fixed fee billing because they didn't have enough data to stand behind. They didn't know all the nuances that went into why a matter costs, what a matter costs. They hope, and their hypothesis is, that now they will achieve that level of information. And so we've thought for a long time, what are corporate general counsel's offices going to do? They are exploring this technology. But it's not necessarily dire, not at all, as we'll see. There are 3 elements that make a cognitive tool, without getting into the technical elements. Cognitive tools understand, they reason, and they learn. And by understand, we've talked about this, they understand human language, tone, intent, even the psycholinguistic characteristics of personality, which is one of the demos that I'll show you. And they reason, they form evidence-based hypotheses. They put forth a recommendation, and they learn, improving with each use, becoming more valuable with time. And these demos that I'm about to show you, as I show them to you, I would respectfully ask that you keep 2 things in mind. First, there is no one thing that is Watson. Watson is not a product in the traditional sense. It's not software in a box. It is a constellation of capabilities that can be configured, approximately 55, 60 capabilities, that can be configured in any number of ways to suit an individual client's goals and needs. So it's not a product in the traditional sense, and it's not programmed. There are no programmers involved. It is trained. And the people that train it, of course, are lawyers, doctors, people that want to scale the expertise of high-performing individuals throughout their organization. It learns not just what these individuals think, but how they think. And it's how you think, this is where Professor Susskind and I may disagree, it's how you think that, arguably, your clients value you for. Can you scale that? Can you democratize that? So, brief summary of personality insights. It's my favorite cognitive capability. It involves psycholinguistic profiling. And the idea here is that we can take 3,500 words of first-person text from multiple sources and derive a 52-point personality portrait that is nearly as accurate as if you walked into a university psychology lab and took one of the tests that was used to build the model to train the system, which is how we validated it. But so what? So you know someone is an introvert. You know someone is neurotic. What value is that? The value comes from comparing these characteristics against other things that you know about an individual, what they've done, what they've bought, what they've invested in. If they're a judge, how they've ruled. If they're a potential candidate that you might want to hire, how their personality aligns with what you're looking for and what has proven successful in the past. We are going to look at the personality characteristics of one of the most famous lawyers in the world, and one you're not expecting, Gandhi. And so here we have some pre-populated text that we're going to analyze, something he wrote. And it comes back with this analysis. You are shrewd, skeptical, and restrained. You're philosophical. You are open to and intrigued by new ideas, and you love to explore them. You're independent. You have a strong desire to have time to yourself. You're empathetic. You feel what others feel and are compassionate towards them. Your choices are driven by a desire for discovery. You're relatively unconcerned with both achieving success and tradition. You make decisions with little regard for how they show off your talents, and you care more about making your own path than following what others have done. Now, here we have some of those 52 personality traits, but I'll show them all to you. Let's see if it works. This is a fingerprint that I can compare against other customers, other candidates, other opposing lawyers. And we are using this, and this is probably some of the technology that's embedded in more Watson solutions than any others for human resources, for physician-patient matchmaking, especially with psychology. The next tool I'm going to show you involves a movie. It's about 3 minutes long. And the tool is called Argumentor. And it's still in beta. It's still being designed, but I have permission to share it with you tonight. And it is a kind of legal research tool. Certainly the world does not need more traditional legal research resources. There are plenty of those where lawyers can find the law. This is about constructing a compelling argument or counter-argument.
It would be ideal if I had someone to help me construct the arguments that would best serve my...
Yeah, I actually need to request audio. There's a plug that's supposed to... We'll come back to the previous tool. This tool is called Expertise Finder, and it solves a problem that most law firms that I've met with have. And the problem is, well, I'll tell you a story, actually, from my own experience when I was an associate. The problem is that I would send emails to my colleagues all the time asking them, have you ever worked on something like this before? And sometimes the responses that I received back were poor. Sometimes they were completely wrong. Sometimes they were excellent. But they were inconsistent, and I was left having to reinvent the wheel. This tool allows you to search the firm's collective knowledge. And it does that by allowing you to ask a natural language Google-like question, and it's connecting to certain sources of information. They can be different sources for different organizations. But here, suppose I work at a large firm, and I have offices in Dubai. And I'm looking to speak with a partner in Dubai with experience in Islamic finance. And I run that search, and I suspect the aspect ratio is a little off here, but it understands that Dubai is in the Middle East. If I were to scroll through these areas, it would understand that I was talking about finance. And so here is a partner. I'm going to look at him now. What's interesting about this is these documents come from the document management system. So Watson is reading the documents in the firm's document database and identifying the degree to which they correlate this individual with Islamic finance. We're not talking about keywords, again, but context. And it's looking at how much time he spends billing in an industry or a client that has to do with Islamic finance. It's also linking to awards that he's won, articles that he's written, etc. Whatever an organization determines the indicia of expertise to be. And the user can rank this up or down. What's interesting is that when we go through our use case identification workshops with law firms, this is always one of the highest prioritized use cases, and it's not a very sexy use case, frankly. It's not, but it meets a sound, sober business need, a practice need. And it might surprise you to know that most Watson use cases align around business of law rather than practice of law, problems and goals. Some matters are very difficult to price. The final invoice that you submit to a client, when you add up all the invoices that you've submitted from the beginning, the total amount is significantly off what you proposed. What are the factors that go into why a matter costs what it cost? It's not just numbers. There are a lot of substantive, qualitative factors that go into that as well. That's another use case. And I can share these use cases with you if you're interested afterwards. But let's see if we can watch this film.
It would be ideal if I had someone to help me construct the arguments that would best serve my client and prepare me for those from opposing counsel. This takes so much time. Today I received this email from Dharma, my boss. In seconds, the argumenter can find the relevant keywords and legal concepts in my email, and it highlights the keywords. Argumenter is a cognitive application and can think differently than I do. It lets me remove the irrelevant concepts and add my own before going on to discover the arguments. Argumenter is programmed to learn continuously. By clicking Build Arguments, I send my input for deep processing. Argumenter scans hundreds of thousands of legal arguments. It returns a short list of the most relevant arguments that were raised by the different parties in a broad range of cases. Even before looking at each individual argument, I can see the strongest arguments in a single view, sorted by relevancy. The issue of unlawful search seems dominant and plays a major role for my client. I now see that this argument is based on Terry versus Ohio. In the case's information view, I can see all the related information about that case. Terry versus Ohio was a landmark case. It made the front page of the New York Times, and it was decided by a conservative ruling. It's also extremely relevant for my client. Here I can see all kinds of legal information for this and other cases, such as the parties involved, when it happened, who won the case, and the major associated issues. By selecting a case, I can highlight its associated arguments. Argumenter allows me to choose specific arguments and sort them into pro and con categories.
This is where it gets interesting.
Sorted arguments are sent to the desk screen, where I can examine them further. When I find arguments that support my client, I put them in the pro folder, and I put arguments that might be used by opposing counsel into the con folder. Argumenter uses the way I group arguments as pro and con to learn. It deploys a classifier that can sort all the arguments as neutral, in favor of my client, or against him. The application files arguments in the right place, even if I didn't explicitly assign them to any folder. I can see this on my desk. Here's my desktop, the final stop for the argumenter. My desk initially contains collections of sorted arguments based on my selections and those organized by Argumenter's classification algorithm. The darker colored notes in each pile are the arguments I selected, while the lighter colored ones were sorted by the Argumenter classifier. Using Argumenter, my legal research is much faster and more thorough.
Argumenter builds upon IBM Watson's core language understanding and innovative debating technologies from IBM Research. For this case, argumenter ingested 7,400 cases decided by the U.S. Supreme Court between 1937 and 1975. Here are some of the reactions from lawyers we've been working with. For more information on Argumenter, contact us at IBM Research Haifa.
All right. Finally, I'd like to share what I believe is the next significant idea in cognitive computing with you and its impact on the legal profession. In the near future, companies will buy cognitive cartridges, cartouche, and these cartridges will be trained by professionals and experts. And then these cartridges will be resold to other businesses who will evaluate their own data as if it were being evaluated by these professionals and experts who trained the system. That's radical. We did this with Memorial Sloan Kettering, a hospital in America. We trained Watson in oncology, and then we took that instance of Watson and we brought it to Bumrungrad, which is a hospital in Thailand. And for the first time ever, we scaled expertise in a completely new way, in a way that can meaningfully help people where in some areas expertise is limited. We anticipate that this will become a new kind of content and that there will be a marketplace for it. We recently acquired a consulting firm called Promontory, not for their technology, but for their knowledge. They specialize in anti-money laundering. We want them to train cognitive, to train Watson, and then we want to sell those cartridges to banks who will evaluate their own data as if it were by these individuals. And of course, the tool will learn and change and adapt to every environment that it's sold into. There is no mothership that is Watson, and by that I mean IBM does not derive information from each instance of Watson. Each instance of Watson is cut off from every other instance of Watson, so I think that's important to know. Now, this cartridge idea can be used for incredible good. So we're investigating an initiative called Watson Justice, which is similar to Watson Health. It's to some degree nonprofit, and the idea is around access to justice. America, shamefully, ranks last amongst first world countries when it comes to access to the civil and criminal justice system for poor people. And we imagine a scenario where lawyers who are experts in domestic violence, that's where we anticipate starting. Lawyers who are experts in domestic violence can train a digital virtual agent, a chat bot, that people can interact with on their phone. And it will help them determine if they have a legal right. That's often the first question. Do I have a legal right? And it will have a conversation, not a scripted dialogue, but a conversation. You can ask clarifying, disambiguating questions of it. It will ask you clarifying, disambiguating questions if it's unsure what you mean. It can take you through forms that might be difficult for someone in a situation that's stressful to fill out, or even for a lawyer to fill out. And it can connect you with the authorities. And you can stop that process at any time if you're not comfortable. And this is a tool that a state government might invest in and then provide free of charge to its citizens, and then a tool that would be scaled state by state. So again, we hear this alarmist information about artificial intelligence, and our only significant reference point to artificial intelligence is the media and popular culture, where self-aware robots, somehow magically miss us when they shoot at us. That would never happen. They have eyes in front of their heads, they can't see behind them. They're too human-like, and they're too pop. That's not a reflection of what's actually being built. What's actually being built, what's here today, can help, and is helping, and represents a possibility of different applications. And so, I thank you for your time this evening. It really, truly was an honor to be here at this place. And if you have any questions and want to speak afterwards, it would be my pleasure. Thank you.
Je précise que pour ceux qui se sont inscrits, à 19 h, il y aura une démonstration du fameux robot Watson par Brian, une démonstration en vrai. Alors c'est de l'autre côté, c'est dans l'autre pavillon, pour les gens qui se sont inscrits préalablement. Maintenant, si vous avez des questions avant de voir la démonstration pour ceux qui sont inscrits, évidemment, elles sont les bienvenues.
Many thanks for talking about today and the possibilities of today's Watson. What about tomorrow? What do you think of Richard Susskind's prediction that AI will be at the top of the pyramid in a few years, and that actually computers or solutions such as Watson would think as an expert?
You know, I don't know. And IBM sells tools to businesses. So what is possible in research is different than what a customer might want to purchase now. Now, AI represents expert-trained systems. But we are working on an automated ontology builder. So, yes, to some degree, we will be able to get closer and closer to mimicking expertise. But I don't know what the dividing line is. I don't think anyone does. Yeah.
Thierry Vickers, avec un micro peut-être. Voilà.
How many legal firms in USA are using Watson already, and are they small or big law firms?
Dozens of law firms in the United States, and most of them are large to medium law firms. Some of these law firms want to find new ways to generate revenue, and so they are building and monetizing Watson solutions, which is in a whole number of ways. But mostly it's larger law firms.
What does it mean for you, medium and large, or small or large law firms? Because we're in France and it's probably not the same level.
Well, law firms with 2,000 or more attorneys. Now, our strategy is to focus primarily on corporate legal departments because IBM's customers are corporations. We are changing that. So when I was appointed the leader of Watson Legal, my goal was, again, to go out and speak with the legal community, not to anticipate without reflection what they might need, but to ask and to find a way to serve clients of all sizes. So there was, remember, Watson's very new. There was how it's been and how it will be, and we will absolutely scale to serve law firms of all sizes.
Thank you very much for your speech. It was very interesting. I would like to know, is this system very expensive? Is it affordable for a medium-sized law firm, or is it, yes, is it expensive? That's my question.
It is affordable for a medium-sized law firm. Part of this depends upon scope. Remember, you can configure this in any number of ways. You could spend $500,000. You could spend $70 million. Okay. Not that you ever would. As a law firm, that's not what we would build, but it depends. And part of the engagement process is a consulting element where we come in and we evaluate the best starting place based upon factors that have led to success in the past. We don't wing it. We don't engage in science projects.
Yes, I would like to know if there is any sector or any industry which have more appetite to use Watson in a law firm, banking or insurance. Insurance, definitively, right.
Insurance, banking, healthcare, telco, and then oil and gas.
Because they have more volume of data just to feed the machine?
Exactly. I mean, if you look at the dominance of certain types of litigation in America, by far and away in America, most litigation is funded by the insurance industry. So the volume of information is an advantage that domain owns.
Compared to, I would say, European system, what I see when you do some M&A compared to the US and compared to Europe, we have less volume of data in the theorems. Mm-hmm. So I see that Watson is interesting when you have a huge volume, And I see that some tickets, I mean, just for similar to like Watson, or could be $20,000 for 2,500 documents, right? This is the first ticket. We don't have necessarily 2,500 documents. So what do you see? What is the interest for us, which have less document, in order to pull some, you know, interesting data? How do you see such? Because if it is unorganized, that's fine if you have 2,500 documents. But there is a need to be organized if you have less document. Do you agree with me?
I do. So there are two answers. One, Watson does benefit from a massive amount of information, but two, it also benefits from training without the need for a massive amount of information.
Right.
So it really depends. However, the best Watson use cases are those that involve a large volume of data, but large is contextual. It depends.
Yeah. So the example, the video you showed us is rely on emails you exchange between one partner to another, or one colleague to another colleagues only, right? Okay. Yeah. Not necessarily to the acts for litigation or to the assignation.
No, and that's not the product. That's a demonstration of the technology.
Right.
The actual product will be closer to early case assessment.